So I started thinking. I personally think that ESD was developed for gastric cancers. It wasn't developed for esophagus. It wasn't developed for colon. So all these knives, they work perfectly well in stomach. And there is not much of a problem with experience. All these knives can be handled. But as soon as you start venturing out of stomach, there is a problem. Because these knives were not designed for those areas outside stomach. So the risks start going up. And you have to be very careful in choosing your knife. I still think there's place for all these knives. Once you begin to understand the movements of these knives and the lesions and the risk, you can combine some knives. There is a big problem with this. As I said, there is no standardization of which knife to use where. It goes by the boss and the system you came from. And I don't think this will ever come out, this sort of standardization will ever happen in Japan. It has to happen in the West. We have to identify the place of each knife in each lesion, in each organ, because they're not going to do it. I think there is a need for combination of knives. Again, that's what I've been working on, how to combine various knives to make ESD quicker, easier, and to achieve completion when you begin to struggle. There is a problem with diathermy setting. Every boss, every owner and inventor of knife has his own setting. I can't understand. They're all shafts which cut through. Why is there a different setting for every? But there is a different setting. So I feel the way forward for a Western endoscopist is the hybrid techniques. And this is what we started working as soon as I came back, because I felt this is the way we can start doing some. So if you break down the process of ESD, which Norika showed you, I think marking, probably if it's a big LST granular type, you don't really need, but flat non-granular LSTs, which are very subtle, I think it's very useful to mark those lesions. Then in ESD, next step is submucosal injection, followed by a circumferential incision all the way around the lesion. After that, ESD goes in this direction, that you do submucosal dissection, bit by bit, bit by bit. You go in the submucosal plane, you keep dissecting it. I find that very difficult. That's the most challenging bit of the whole game. Thanks, Bjorn. But what I feel is once you reach this area, what you've done now, practically speaking, is isolated the disease from the non-diseased mucosa. So you got a big groove around the polyp, which you cut around. So you almost sort of guaranteed a complete cure if you're careful. Rather than then doing this very careful dissection, which might take 5 hours, if you can inject sufficient amount of fluid and create a bit of a groove, you can get your snare into it, which Brian showed you earlier, and you can start taking it off. It's much quicker, and it gives you a handle of knife till you get more experience. So we developed a pig model, which will illustrate. This is another Olympus ESD device called hot claw. You make a little mucosal defect very close to each other. I think the claw is about 8 millimeters. But you can take a 1 centimeter mucosa in between these two defects. So what we've done is made 2 little defects 1 centimeter apart, then join them by putting the jaws of the claw into these defects and then pulling it away just like you do hot biopsy, and that gives you a nice little mucosal incision. Then you move on to another 2 defects that you create next to it and join them. Then those claws and bites don't work. It's now time to do dissection. A dissection, you need a knife. So you start using the knife you use. And I find going downwards this way, IT knife is fantastic. So going down is great, but IT doesn't go up. You can't go up with an IT knife. And that's where this mucosectome is beautiful. See how well you can control. You go up. An upward movement with this mucosectome is very good. So I think till you become very good with ESD, you need to understand the knife, use the right knife for the right movement, which bit of this area you're handling, and you can combine knives very effectively.